age-wise? Like, do you feel old? Do you notice your body shutting down? I don't go to the doctor for fear of them telling me that I have a finite amount of time to live.
When do you become a man? Sure. Society is like, all right, you become a man at 18, but then you turn 18 and you're like, am I a man? Like, I don't
know. Sleep is literally the antidote to death. I wanted to pack everything I could into a 24-hour period, grab life by the horns, live it to the fullest. I'm going to go to bed at 9:30 and feel amazing when I wake up.
Yeah, so when I went to Canada where we all first met, there was part of me that wanted to stop at the gift shop in the airport and buy all Canada stuff. So that when I roll into the group meet, I'm just in like red and white with maple leaves all over everything I have.
Oh my gosh. You would instantly, you don't judge a book by its cover, but everyone would be judging you right as you rolled up. Just like, hey guys, I'm here in Canada. This is great. This is camera around your neck.
Yeah.
A map, a physical map in one hand.
What do you think people who were judging me would think?
They would think this guy is extra. I'm going to create a little distance. I definitely don't want to get in a conversation with this guy. He's going to keep me talking about nothing for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And they would be right. At least as far as talking about nothing for 45 minutes.
Me?
That's why we have the podcast.
That's why we have the podcast. And it's not about nothing.
No.
It's about midlife crises, bro. Yeah.
The best was when we were driving down and you were talking to the bus driver. For like 2 hours.
Oh,
and you just didn't want to hear any of it.
Nope. And I was sleeping in the back. I was like, I went to sleep, you were talking. I woke up, you were talking.
Oh, yeah.
It was so funny.
When we were going home from dinner.
Man, I was so wiped.
And he kept hinting that he didn't want to keep talking. And I just kept going with him.
He kept using those like, wow, all right. Well, thanks for that talk. And you're like, speaking of that. And he's like, oh.
I probably had Diet Coke for dinner or something. That's why I was too amped, dude. Yeah, I was so. Oh, and I was on bear watch, so I was trying to find bears.
Oh, and then you woke up 3 hours later to go on a sunrise-ish hike,
where I continued talking to the people who didn't want to talk at that time.
Yeah, that's actually why I chose not to go on that hike. I was like, well, he's just going to keep talking.
Tyson's going to be there yapping it up.
The thing is, I know that they're bugged, but it makes it like more enjoyable for me for some reason. I don't know why it is, but like if you don't want to be talked to.
Oh yeah, you push into that.
I push into that really hard. And yeah. And if there's like a couple people that don't want it, like if everybody was sleeping, so I was quiet-ish enough in that van, I thought, but I knew that the old guy didn't want it, but I gave him a tip, dude. I gave him $100 bill.
Dude, I would have listened to you for $100.
That's pretty sweet.
Plus, look, that was also you were being Papa Bear because that guy's got to stay awake and alert, driving all of us home. So you were just helping, the group there. So
I was in the passenger seat. That is my duty, is to make sure.
Passenger princess. Yeah, you had to do it.
Yeah.
Did you give him the $100 bill because you knew that you were bothering the whole time? Or
yeah.
Was it a Canadian 100? Because if not, you gave him more. You gave him more than
US 100.
Yeah, US 100. I think
probably
that's
the best tip he's ever got.
120. Yeah,
I mean, he was hinting at tips the whole time to everybody, but I think also that the budget also paid him a tip already.
I'm sure.
Which I found out afterwards, and then I regretted my decision. I could have a cool Hyundai in my wallet right now, dude. But yeah, let's get into it. We are the Midlife Crisisses. There's 3 crises here.
At
Bradley,
least.
I always have a hard time with your name because you say it's pronounced one way, but that you want it pronounced another way, or it used to be, or something. You were trying to change the pronunciation a little bit. So what is the real pronunciation, and what do you want us to say?
Okay, Bradley Hasemayer, like possession of Oscar Mayer, Hasemayer.
Yeah,
that's the easiest way to say it. When growing up, and even now, and I didn't realize it, I leaned toward the hard S to a Z, which is a little more German. This is Hasemayer, Asphalt, Vagol, Sprachen Sie Deutsch? Nein, it's that. My parents, it was a soft S, Hasemayer, but I like Hasemayer, like with a Z.
So what are we saying?
Hasemayer. My parents aren't on here. This is me. Okay. I set the tone.
Okay.
Midlife crisis that.
Dude, I have never heard of somebody changing the pronunciation of their last name. Just
It wasn't intentional. It was like one day someone was like, "Oh, I thought you said Hasemayer," and I was like, "I don't think so." And my parents were like, "Yeah, it's Hasemayer," and I was like, "Oh, well." So that's why on Instagram I'm BHaz, Haz, because it's like how I pronounce Hasemayer.
Got it.
And it's Bradley. I tried Brad. Brad was way too cool for me. I'm just good old like, aw shucks, Bradley. And so I'm sticking with that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And William Drumm also named confusion because he goes by Bill to his closest, dearest friends. So off of this podcast, Bradley and I would call you Bill. Here, we call you William for more professional reasons so that the audience knows you as William.
Yeah.
Is that all correct?
That's all correct. 100%.
Okay. All right, William.
All right, William.
So weird hearing it, though.
Is it weird coming out of my mouth after all the talking you heard me do in Canada?
Yes.
Yeah, here's what makes a midlife crisis great, though. Crises are all about changing in the moment, adjusting and adapting. If you hate us calling you William, after a while, we probably won't stop because we'll know you hate it. But we, in our hearts, we will know we should, just for the record.
Correct. The premise of this show is to address our midlife crises, talk about that going on in our lives. And so each week, one of us comes up with a question. Last week, we talked about being surrounded by death.
It's Morbid Bradley stepping in the room.
I call him Morbid Hasemayer.
That's right.
And this week, I wanted to kind of lighten the tone a little bit, but stay on that same like mortality conversation.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm 45. That's a midlife to a 90-year-old, like exactly in the middle, which 90 is above the age. I still feel invincible at this point. Like I still don't feel like I'm gonna die. Like I haven't had an experience close enough to death yet. I don't go to the doctor for fear of them telling me that I have a finite amount of time to live. Right,
totally.
And so, like, I'm like, oh, I can't breathe through my nose, and that's been going on for 2 years. It's probably
take
something.
A Tylenol. I'm sure it's fine.
So, my question is this, and I mean, even further on Instagram, I'm getting bombarded with like supplements to make you youthful, like injections, like you give yourself your own injections now.
What?
Hair loss, like supplements.
Oh yeah,
you know, all of it. And so my question is this: do you feel the same as you did 10, 15, 20 years ago, or do you feel different age-wise? Like, do you feel old? Do you notice your body shutting down? Are there moments where you're like, I'm going to fucking die? Like, I will die like, this is one step closer to death. I can feel it. Or are you still in that sweet spot where you're like, I still feel like I could crush anybody younger than me at anything athletic? Like, what are your feelings? And how long until death gets us? You don't have to answer that last one, but
yeah, I want to hear from William because he's the younger of all three of us.
Yes.
Because he may either be able to say like, I remember how old are you again? William? 39.
He's going to be 40.
Man, being 40, I can't believe it. It's been so long for the both of us.
Yeah.
I actually really like getting older. But and I'll talk more about that in a second, but I'm really curious how William feels, because also William lives a life that's a lot more on the edge, that's a lot more face to face with what you and I, Tyson, just regular folk, would consider dangerous. As a professional diver, as someone who travels a lot more, and he goes to these remote places. Last time he talked about like, you know, sleeping in sleeping bags with some crocodiles.
Well, they weren't in the sleeping bag, but
they were close enough. If you're on this deserted island, if something goes south, you're dead. You know, like I'm not living in that realm yet. I'm waking up with a sore knee and trying to figure out why. So I'm curious, William, your perspective on that to start with.
Well, I would say that, like how you're saying how you really like getting older, I do think that I'm starting to feel kind of the same way about that, in that like all of these years of doing things, I feel like it was hard to like absorb the wisdom that you get out of all these things. And then once you start getting older, like you learn the same lessons over and over again, and then they kind of get ingrained in you, and you start getting wiser. So you guys, you're pretty old, so you're probably way wiser than
So
I
wise.
am.
We're both so wise.
But congratulations.
Yeah.
I would say that I definitely notice like the obvious things as far as like it takes longer to bounce back after doing like a big trip like that where I'm going super hard. Like it used to be I'd get back in town and I was fine the next day to do whatever. Now like I gotta rest up a little bit, take my time, like eat better, and and that's another big thing too. I think I don't feel like I'm like that much older than I was 10 years ago most of the time, but I do feel like things like eating good and exercise like are really important now, and if I don't do those things then I feel like crap. Whereas back in the day I could just do whatever nonstop and feel fine and not worry about it. Now like I mean my stomach, like if I don't eat good I'll have heartburn for days, and like exercise, if I don't exercise I get like more tired. And so yeah, I definitely feel like I'm a little bit older, but it's really an interesting thing because I've always thought about like when do you become a man? Like, you know,
that's a great question.
Society is like, all right, you become a man at 18, but then you turn 18 and you're like, am I a man? Like, I don't know. I don't really feel like I am.
Yeah. I don't know how to pay a mortgage still.
Yeah. Now you see an 18-year-old and you're like, Jesus Christ, look at how little that guy is. Hey, man, like pinch his cheeks, you know? So then I was like, oh,
William over here. Come here.
And then I would say that now that I'm almost 40, I feel like I'm finally like, oh, maybe I am actually like becoming a man after all of this time where, oh, I'm a boy still. Like I'm a 30-year-old boy, whatever it might be. So yeah, I do think I'm getting older. I still feel youthful at times, but my body definitely lets me know that, yeah, I ain't 20 anymore.
I think you bring up something that only recently I have come to terms with, which is, you know, I think there's a number of anybody listening to this and us as well can instantly highlight one or two things that come to their brain about like what it's like to get older, right? It could be metabolism, can't eat like I used to. William, you brought up the idea of like rebound, you know, like I joke with my friends, like I was, you know, running after some kids in the neighborhood and we were playing football and I caught them.
Nice.
But then the next day I was
like, actually
like
chasing them? They steal something from you, or
no? We were just like hanging around, like playing. But they were running full speed, and I caught them. Yeah, come back here with my trash bag. And my hamstrings were like, what? I couldn't even move the next day. I was like, what happened? Like, did someone slice my? You know. So there's that. But I think for me, that one of the things that I'm learning to do is embrace sleep. Like my friend was telling me about this 100%. TED Talk he saw, and it was all about like how sleep is literally the antidote to death. Like what happens in your body over the hours that you're sleeping, the recouping, either it's rebuilding of muscle, it's repairing tissue damage, it's resetting your brain. But when I was younger, man, in college, it was all about like, what's the smallest amount I could do? Like if I could stay up, and it wasn't even bad stuff. Yeah. It was like, if I could study until 2 a.m., then I could get up at 6 and go for a run, and then be at my 8 o'clock class. It was like I wanted to pack everything I could into a 24-hour period, grab life by the horns, live it to the fullest. And I think my wife has always been a great sleeper. Like, yeah, you know, I was like, oh, hey, you know, when we first started dating, I was like, oh, so I was thinking like 8 o'clock breakfast. And she's like, can we do 11? I'm like, I'm having lunch at 11. So I don't know, you know, and I'm like, I've already done like 15 things before lunch. And she's like, you know, being a mom, obviously that changes things. But I just kind of ran from the idea of sleep. It seemed lazy. It seemed unnecessary. Oh, if I could just go through my day and not sleep, I could get so much more done. And I feel like over the past 4 or 5 years, I've embraced that idea of like, you know what? I'm not going to stream 5 shows tonight. I'm going to go to bed at 9:30 and feel amazing when I wake up, you know? And to me, that's a little bit of like, I feel like the question too of like, when do we become a man? I think the definition of like, what is a man, I think is always kind of like floating out there too. And, you know, it used to be like the go hard, nothing stops you, nothing can prevent you. You're invincible, right? Tyson, that was your original question.
Yeah.
And I think I've embraced the idea that I'm not, and I need things like sleep, like vitamins, I had this great moment, this great LA moment. I had just turned 30. So on the precipice, there's the word. On the precipice of this big new change in my life. And I'm at my doctor's office and doing it, just having a physical, routine kind of, every year kind of physical. And he looks at me and he says, "We need to talk." And he shuts the door. He comes back in with his, his clipboard and pen and everything. And I'm like, okay, so I have cancer. Clearly this is going to be what he's going to say. So he looks at me very sternly and he says, "Do you realize you're losing your hair?" And it's such a great LA moment of like, you should think about Botox at 22 because, and I was like, whoa, doc, and he's like, "And it's really serious. You need to get ahead of this." And I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. That's great. But I'm living, right? Like there's no, and so it's like, I got to take my biotin.
What can this lead to?
Oh no, I won't book roles. I'll be the guy without hair. Oh no. But I got to take my vitamins. I got to do my things. I got to, and I've also put in, I'm not invincible in my workout schedule. Like I would love, just like, I love working out. I love being active, all that. But I've learning to value rest, which can be all kinds of things: meditation, sleeping in, taking things off your plate, have a day that's not as busy, just as much as I value the other, the working out, the busy, the travel, right, William? I mean, if you go back to back on like a week, diving and then a week in the Rockies, and you're just going to be crap by the end of that. There's no real value. You're diminishing returns on your energy. So I think for me, I've just come to grips with like, maybe that's how it's supposed to be. I mean, in like the world of, the Bible, right? In Jewish Sabbath, like there was a day of rest that was baked into everything because the idea was like, your body's not made to go that long. The fuel tank eventually runs out on your car. We don't have mid-driving refueling like you do in the air in an airplane. Like your car has to stop for a little bit. It needs to rest for a few minutes while you get gas. So I kind of feel that way about myself.
Yeah. And it's so like last month I went to Bonaire for a week. I brought my daughter. I came back for a day and then I flew up to Canada to meet these guys. And then I flew back down to the Caribbean to St. Eustatius for another week after being in Denver for only one day. And then I came back. And you're right, Bradley. I was like a mess that week that I came back. Like irritable, just couldn't focus, like anything, like really bad. So I think that I'm not invincible at all like I used to be, like we're talking about it that way. And if you don't build in that rest into things, then it can really like mess you up. It can affect all kinds of like, I was in a meeting right after that trip and I got into it with this person and we started like really getting into it, like not really like me at all. And it was just because I've been running so hard for 3 weeks straight, no sleep. And then I came back into this office world, sitting in front of the office all day. And like, I was not in the right headspace. So if you don't build in that rest, I think it can be really bad. And with work, I'm trying to adjust to not doing what you're talking about, Bradley, where I just stay up super late, like, and just grind on things. And like I'm a creative or whatever, so like I kind of have to follow those creative flows. And for me, a lot of those creative flows happen in the middle of the night, and I'll work until last weekend. I worked till 4:30 a.m. one day. But I know now that because of getting older, I can't just bounce back like that. Like I can't do these crazy grind sessions and then wake up and then work again the next day. So it's been really hard trying to figure out how to still keep that creative energy and like take advantage of that flow state that you can get in when you're creating without killing myself the next day. And also being like a single dad, I have to have a routine for my daughter. So I've got to get her to school. I've got to pick her up, got to take her to dance, whatever it might be. So it's completely opposite of how I kind of work naturally, because naturally I'm staying up super late working, sleeping in until 9 a.m. or something like that, and then getting it up and doing it again, having breaks, working again super late at night. But then I'll get my daughter and it's like, oh, okay, I've got to get everything done between the time I take her to school and pick her up, which means I have to go to bed at a decent time because I have to be able to focus really well during that time so I can hit my goals and still be available for her in the afternoon. So it's been a huge adjustment. I'm definitely not there yet, but It's a fun challenge to work on.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a sleeper. I
can see that. You know, there's just something about you, Tyson, that just reads snooze button.
Yeah,
I think it's your energy level.
No
your
alarm.
energy level just keeps going. It's got to come from somewhere. So you don't strike me as a tired person.
No.
I get tired if I don't get enough sleep. And but I was a pro athlete. I was a pro cyclist, and it was like you got to get your 10 hours of sleep. You can do it in multiple stages. Like you got to get at least 8 or 9 hours at night, and then a nap, or you can do all 10 at night. Whatever you want to do. Even collegiate swimming, it was like you got to try and get your sleep in. And so that was something I always did. And if I didn't, I bounced back well. And like I could even compete the next day off of poor sleep. And a lot of times you get nervous the night before a competition and you don't sleep very well anyways. And I always thought that I had the best memory in the world. I have great memory. But when I started getting less sleep because I have kids, I got to get up early. They're up in the middle of the night. Sometimes they need their thing from me and I don't get the sleep I need. And then I'm doing my thing late so that I can catch up on stuff. And it's that cycle. And then I'm forgetting stuff all the time. I'm like, I wasn't better than anybody else. I just been getting more sleep than everybody for the last 3 decades. And now that I'm not, I'm just an average schlub on the street with an average memory who forgets shit like people's last names that I went to high school with and have been friends with for 20 years. Like, so.
But is that also you getting older? I mean, is that one of those like my sight is going, is that part of that? Or do you think you really attribute it's really just a sleep thing?
I really think it's a sleep thing. I really do. Because if I do get my sleep for a good amount of time, then I'm fine. I'm fine with the memory and stuff. But the second that like I'm lacking on that, then I did notice that. I also wanted to touch on like Bradley, you're saying that like all this sleep reset stuff is important. So would you say add 10 years to your life, but all of that is sleep? Or
I like the either. Would you rather?
You're having the same amount of awake hours? So
oh man,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's like it's also about like the quality and the value of the awake time, right? Because it's also like, if I'm honest, even when I was staying up late working, it wasn't great work. It certainly wasn't efficient. Like if I was editing from, midnight to 2, I was half as efficient in those 2 hours than I could be from 9 to 2 in the morning, or 9 to 11 in the morning. Right. Yeah. So it was also kind of like the reality of it's not, staying up later isn't like I'm getting that much more out of life. I'm actually losing more, I think. So I would say sleep in general, because also when you decide to say I'm human, I'm going to die one day, I need to be my best self while I'm here, and you embrace that, I think it trickles into other aspects to your life, right? It's knowing, oh yeah, I shouldn't work out 5 straight days. I need to take a day off, even if that's humbling. Even if you see other people like, I'm at the gym 7 days, I run 5 days, I cycle 7 days, like whatever. You're like,
never stop grinding.
Never
Hustle
stop.
Mentality.
Never
if you're
let
not a millionaire before 23, then you're a doofus.
I'm sorry, did I just turn on my Instagram? Because that's what I see.
That's all I see too, dude.
Past? Oh my gosh.
Mixed with the testosterone injections and the hair supplements and the face creams and all that stuff. Like it just like my algorithm is like,
we're doing so much. We're trying to do so much. I really think sleep is a big, like, people are like, I'm not going to sleep, so I have to do these 19 other things. I was pre-med in college and until I failed organic chemistry. But during that time, before I failed and switched over to PR, a classic move from pre-med to PR, cliche, in fact, I remember witnessing an open heart surgery, and the amount of equipment it took for just what a heart does passively was mind-blowing. I mean, you have an entire person devoted to this monitor, as well as like they have to filter the blood as it's going through, because that's what the heart does, and pump it as well. I was just like, that's what that little thing does that I didn't think about. And I think that's how sleep is a little bit. It's like, yeah, you can stay up later, but now you need extra face cream and you need more coffee and you need testosterone because you're not getting enough to. So I don't know. I think sleep is one of those things that we just, as a culture, we don't really value enough. And it's something that I always kind of pushed back against. Like, I don't need that, man. If I get like 5 hours of sleep, I'm pretty good. And then I just realized, you know what? No, I'm for like embracing like, who was it? Cedric the Entertainer, hilarious comedian. He had a whole thing, one of his specials that I saw, and he's like, I'm a grown ass man. I'm not going to go do that thing. And I just like think about that sometimes in my mind. Like, you know what? No, I'm a grown ass man. I'm going to go to bed at 9:30. I don't care what you think. You know, I'm a grown ass man. I don't need to prove anything to anyone, myself included. I don't have to grind for 6 days at the gym like I'm about to compete in the Olympics. It's like, wait, what are you doing? You're going to be sore. Can't even like carry your kids up the stairs because you like pulled your back doing an unnecessary like clean and jerk. Like, what was the point of that? So yeah, I don't know. That's a weird answer to your question, but I think to me, that's one of the biggest changes as I've gotten older and I've accepted that I'm not invincible. Mm-hmm. And then what? What can I do to increase my invincibility, I guess?
And I think that it's also like super rewarding when you can accept that and then make changes based on it. So last year I was going to run a 20-mile race here. And before the race, I trained super hard. I was like running every day, like doing big runs. And then like a month before the race, I went out one night, didn't get much sleep, got up the next day, and I ran like 16 or 17 miles or something like that. And I just blew out my ankles so bad. And then I kept on like trying to train for this race. And then by the time the race came, my ankles were totally blown out. I couldn't do the race. And I was kind of like, oh man, can I just like, is my body just too old? Like, am I not able to run because I'm just an old man? But then I just stopped for a couple months. And then I started like walking every other day. And now I never run 2 days in a row. And it's worked great. And now I'm able to run and I feel awesome when I do it. So like, if you're able to just kind of keep your age or whatever it is, just like reality in perspective, and then work with it, then it's awesome because it's like, oh yeah, I can run and I'm going to be able to run forever. I just need to listen to my body. I can't push it too hard. And like, I can get to this great point, but I can't force it. And I have to go slowly towards it. But as long as I'm working towards it and paying attention, then I can get there for sure.
Yeah. I mean, even as a pro cyclist throughout my career, when I was younger, I could train back-to-back days, push hard. My recovery rate was faster. And later in my career, which was not a long career, I noticed that like I had to take extra days. Bruises on my body wouldn't heal as fast if I was exhausted, all of that stuff. Crazy. And I was like, well, this is already happening to me, but now I feel like I've recovered. So follow-up question. Could you, at least in your mind, be as good as you ever were physically if you had the time and routine to get there?
I could for sure.
Yeah. I think so, because also you look at
easy.
I think that too right now. I'm 45 and I'm like, one of the guys I raced with just retired last year. He's 44 when he retired. So now like, I was like, I could probably, if I want, I could have done that too. Like, and I still could. I just don't have the time now.
I would say compared to my earlier self, I don't necessarily know if I could, there's plenty of people I could not beat at various athletic, accomplishments. But from where I was at, whatever in my 20s, I mean, really your 30s and your 40s are like prime testosterone, prime like body years in terms of health, in terms of energy, in terms of all that. And then it starts to fall off. Clearly, you know that as an old 45-year-old,
yes.
Yes. I can see you as we're coasting down.
Yeah.
But I actually feel better just overall. And I've talked to a lot of dads who feel this way, that feel better physically, because I think I'm also better mentally. Mm-hmm. I think you can't really separate the mind and body, right? So when you say physical, it really is kind of your brain as well. And I feel like, and William, you were talking about this, William, you were talking about how, like your wisdom right, is coming around. I think there's like a whole rounding out of a person. I feel better holistically than ever. I certainly don't have some of the stuff we talked about, right? I don't have the rebound. I don't have some of that, but I do feel like, yeah, I mean, I'm at my peak. I think I would say I'm at my peak because I also know how to do it better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when I was playing football in high school, it was like, I'm taking care of myself. Well, what are you doing in high school? You're nothing. You're staying up late, going with friends. You go to the weight room, you kind of half-ass it, whatever, and you go and you play ball, and you're okay. That was it, you know. But now I've got the maturity to be able to know how to take care of myself in a way that I think makes me the best version that I've been so far.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
I think so too. Especially just like having, like being able to do things better from experience, like training better, getting the sleep, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And also, same with you, Bradley. Like I was never like that amazing. Like I played lacrosse.
Yeah, we weren't pro really athletes shape, like Tyson over here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Tour de Tyson.
Okay. Because for me, like I look back and I'm like, I was a badass. I was lean. I was muscular. Yeah. I could do.
For the record, you're still lean and muscular.
But I'm not the same. And could I get back to that same like leanness and muscularity? I don't know if I could. And I definitely but back then I thought in order to achieve that level of excellence, I had to do 30 or 40 hours of work a week. Oof. Riding, going to the gym, doing cross training, eating only salads and grapefruits. And now I'm like, I could probably at least look that fit.
Yeah.
With 10 hours a week. But I haven't tried. That's just me lying to myself, probably. But I think that that's part of it. That's part of us feeling like we are still in our peak, is us saying like, we could if we wanted, but we don't want to. And that's what, that's my answer, at least, is like, people are like, you think you could still do that? I was like, I could, but I don't want to because it's boring and it would
at
take
what
time.
Cost? Yeah, everything costs, right? It's time away from your family, time away from your business, time away from us. We can't have that, Tyson. We can't have that.
Exactly. Okay, final thing.
Great.
Should we be taking testosterone or HGH injections that we are seeing advertised, or the boosters or whatever they're advertising on Instagram? Like, are we going to be there eventually? Like, I am not opposed to that stuff. I just don't feel like I could stick myself every day with a needle just to like maybe lose a little bit of belly fat.
I've never really considered it until recently. My friend works at Med Spa, like a medical spa here.
Okay.
And she's awesome. She's so great. Like I went in there recently and got like a facial, and they gave me a B12 injection.
I could tell.
And it was like $50.
Okay.
So it's like, now that I've got like the really cheap hook on all that stuff, I'm like, oh, I might as well try this out. She blasted off like 20 little things, like little pieces from my body with a laser.
Yeah.
It's really fun stuff. But they do testosterone testing there. Mm-hmm. So I'll probably do the testosterone testing there because it's really cheap, and because like, you know, if that is something that's super easy to address and it's something that I need, then I might as well. But I've never really considered it before that.
I just wonder if the testosterone would be like an old car and you put a new engine in it, and all of a sudden it's like not performing like it's supposed to. It's making weird, like the axles aren't used to that type of torque from the engine, you know, like all of a sudden it's like you put a new Mercedes engine in like an old Honda Civic and you're like, okay, the engine's going to last, but now everything else is falling apart.
No, but all the other stuff, the testosterone, I think helps at a cellular level. So like I've seen studies of HGH where people's eyesight returns.
Okay.
Their wrinkles disappear, their hair starts growing back, like all of that stuff. So it's like, there is a fountain of youth aspect to some of that stuff. But I also like, and I'm not opposed to it necessarily, but I don't think I'm in the place where I'm like, I'm going to seek it out yet. But maybe it's better. Like, that's what I don't know. Like, should I be doing this right now?
I don't know why you're getting served all those ads. I don't get those ads. I don't know if. Also,
I have friends that work for some of these companies.
Okay, so you're interacting with those kinds of accounts. Yeah. Because I was going to say, I don't know also if I want it from an Instagram company. Somebody on Instagram like, hey, we found, can you get it on, Alibaba? Can we have this, from China? Can we get some?
Yeah, for sure. You probably
can I get some Temu testosterone sent over? It's only $1 for a year. I think
if you go to your local gym and start asking around at the
that's a good question.
Like those guys will have that Temu stuff, dude. Some of them will be like, I got like 10 gallons of testosterone. I don't even know how it comes. Like 10 gallons of testosterone from China.
Right. Their third arm is out of their neck holding that bottle. Like, I haven't really seen many side effects. I don't know.
So, all right. Well, we're all getting older. Get your sleep in, everyone. Get your face cream regimen and routine down. I do that. That's something I never did until recently. Yeah. So now I'm doing toner, serum, moisturizer, oil.
Ooh. Wow. All of that.
Night.
And you just wear all that to bed? Or these are like stages of wash and
no,
wash?
I wear it all to bed and go through the whole day I only do it once a day. And that's only if I don't shower too late at night that I have time, that I have an extra 3 minutes to put all that
3 minutes? You're doing that in 3? That's pretty impressive. I feel like it's like 20.
Minutes. Yeah, it's 10 minutes at least because I let it dry, put the next thing on.
Yeah.
So
I started doing serum and cream twice a day.
A day?
After the recommendation from my friend at the spa.
Okay.
But then, so also for me, I got this thing that I call meds, and it's meditation, exercise, diet, and sleep.
Ooh, it's an acronym.
And I took it from somebody, but I can't remember his name, so I didn't invent it. But it's and for me, if I can do those things every day, then it really helps me mentally, physically, just like overall feel a lot better about everything I do.
Say that again. What was the
meds? MEDS. Yeah. So meditation, exercise, diet, and sleep. And I try to do whatever I can first thing in the morning. So if I can exercise and meditate first thing in the morning, then that kind of sets me up for success. And if I do all 4 of those things every day, then I just feel a lot better about everything, and I think more clearly. And so that's kind of my little cheat sheet that I'm trying to use to stay so youthful and young.
Yeah, that's great. I like how Bradley's like exercise. Like
that's the E.
You were doing MDS. You were just doing the MDS, dude. You were like, I thought it was only MDS.
I just feel like I'm missing something.
There's one thing. Anything else before we shut this thing down?
Embrace it. You can't go backwards. This is it. Like, that's why we have this podcast to normalize the struggle, to normalize the uncertainty, to normalize, just like, what are we doing here and how can we be the best versions of ourselves? So I think embrace it.
Yeah. Yep. We're all having crises. Let's have them together.
So many. Yeah. Crises is
normal. It's normal.
So many.
It's normal.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks all for tuning in. Till next week. See ya.
Thanks, guys. Bye.